We'll see. It's been a lot of years in COVID, right? You're
Ah,
definitely
man,
more
you still
camera
got
ready
it.
than me, man.
Welcome back, everybody. We are here for another one of your questions about work. And for those of you who are here for the first time, I'm Roy. I'm a startup investor in the future of work, and we bring in friends to give us perspectives on what's happening with dilemmas people have at work. And Glenn is the head of product and SVP at the LA Times, was at New York Times and Netflix. But really, I think of him as this person who was very kind and thoughtful from the time I think we maybe met. I might have been 17 even,
Yeah,
something like that. So it's
freshman
kind of
year.
crazy to
So
see how this unfolds. And now we go through,
indeed,
we're all living through history together with everybody. So the question we have for
indeed.
today, and Glenn, thank you for doing this, is one of these like ones that hits all of us as working people, which is, I've been working mostly remote. Is it time? Should I stay mostly remote or should I go back to the office? And would love, with your product lens and your leadership lens, any and all thoughts on it.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I appreciate getting to talk with you, Roy. It's great to see you. Thanks for having me. Yeah, let's get into it. The question posed that we pose to ourselves is, should we stay remote or think about in person? And I love the sort of sub card that we have around intentionality. I mean, for me, I've been thinking a lot about this as we all have, and talking to my team and making decisions around it. And I think more than having like a binary, I think, as won't be surprising, nor will it be very revolutionary. It's really good to just have a framework for each team on what you prioritize, what's important to you. And if I can share one thing, so I've been at the LA Times for a year, super impressed with the folks that were already on the team. And, we're evolving a culture that was already there. And I'm also bringing sort of the best parts of what I've seen from Netflix and the New York Times and other places. And for us, we boil down our new emerging culture in a one liner, which is we're going to be rigorous and we're also going to be generous. And at the risk of kind of generalizing, I think what we've seen is that the rigorous work, right, the work around being quantitative, doing offline analysis, writing thoughtful memos, this can be done offline and virtually very well. You can kind of see where I'm going with this, right? But the generous work, and I have a story and I have some specific examples. I think what we're finding is that generous work, the generous aspects of our work may be better done, may be better achieved, may be better resonated in an in-person atmosphere. And so what is it cool if I jump in with an example
Yeah,
there?
please. I'm
Yeah.
good. I mean, this is the framing on, of course, everything should be done with intention. So that is like feels very good and central. These two particular frames I hadn't heard before for intentions, and I'd love to hear the story.
Yeah. And, as a side note about intention, I will say without naming names or corporations, I've been hearing a lot of the what of it all, right? What should we do? What are we doing? This is what's happening, as opposed to the why. And again, as a product person, anyone who works with a product person is bored of them saying, "What is your why? What problem are we trying to solve?" But it is the right first question. So I'll just set that aside, i.e., set some intention as to what is your why, then pursue that. So coming back to it for us, the generous side, we as a team, and it was a particularly new challenge being a new leader of a new team during lockdown, is we set the intention to get together and do a product summit. And our goals were not simply to do the work we do and just replicate it in the office. Not that that's a bad thing, but like, that was not our intention. Our intention was, let's think about the big picture. Let's think about our hopes and dreams for our user experience, for our journalism, and its impact for our business, but also about how we work together in this culture, right? And so we asked each other to give positive feedback, only positive. It was our first time ever doing this live and loud. So we started with positive reinforcing feedback to two people. We did a random assignment of who got whom, and we kicked off the whole summit that way. And I got to tell you, Ray, it was like a super powerful 30 minutes. It's like I didn't even know how impactful and heartfelt it would be, but it was just that kind of thing that just felt like the whole 2 days was worth it just for that.
Wow.
And so again, I know that not all in-person work can be that heartfelt or be that meaningful, but I think like if we can put our lens around aspects of our work and culture that are better done, in person and more powerful. I think that's kind of how we're thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean, what it brings up for me is how to take some of that and bring it into the like, hey, we just decided we're going to be in the office on Wednesdays and Thursdays or something like that. And I'm curious if your team has a pattern on that or has landed on anything in terms of your regular week to week kind of rhythm.
Yeah, I'll just say that I'll state the facts of the case, which we are largely remote and not at the office, like almost all of the time. But so I mentioned the product summit we did back in early May. We're at next week for another 2-day, very high intention time, and people are flying in. We have remote folks from Northern California and other places.
That distant nation
and a distant city state. But the intention there is very different, which is we are road mapping for 2023. We are still in the sort of divergent, throw things at the wall, no stupid ideas. And we felt like as a team, that was a really good intention around let's be together and do that, and then once we start to converge, we can meet, virtually. So to answer your question, no, we don't have a rhythm when it comes to days and weeks, but yes, we sort of towed our way into the water around really specific, what we think are like high impact interactions together. And we've designed around that.
Yeah, the data now seem pretty conclusive from what I understand, and Nick Bloom and others have been public about it. And Charter, which is a future work-related media company that we are investors in, has written about this a bunch, about some form of hybrid seems to be the most productive. Now, and maybe also the thing that makes people happiest, I'm not sure actually about the happiness data, but seems to be the optimal answer for productivity. And then, of course, you get to not all hybrid is created equal. Like, is very... To me, the feeling when I go into the office and nobody else from my team is there is like, oops, I messed that up. And we have a team that's split across multiple locations. And so what I've just noticed is it just takes a tremendous amount of coordination. And I'm now doing this thing where like, I'll DM somebody on our team and be like, hey, are you going to be in the office, whatever day this week? And then maybe, because it's more valuable for me if I know they're there. So there's some coordination. And I know some teams are doing days of the week. And that kind of thing. And then the other thing I've noticed is when we're all together as a team, it is very emotionally powerful. And we have a few members of our team who are good practitioners of gratitude, and that's good because that radiates out for the rest of the team. But then my tools for managing conflict, which I adapted for a world where we were all together all the time, are poorly adapted to a world where we're together some of the time, because things that would have seemed to me as like, hey, this is just another meeting. When you're together more rarely, things can take on a forcefulness that they may not otherwise. And maybe what that suggests is, it's like, this is maybe a dumb way to think about it, but I kind of think of it as like good cop in person, bad cop over email. Although, of course, the problem with that is written tone makes everything worse. So maybe it's live. I don't know. But there's something around the emotional weight of being together in person that I haven't quite figured out yet.
Yeah, I wish I could take some time to reflect on that. As a side note, I interviewed a candidate 2 days ago who had this great presence to say, can I think about that for 30 seconds? It was such a breath of fresh air. And I'll admit my own bias, which is like, I like to fill the spaces, which is a bad thing, right? And we're learning how to be more inclusive in this pandemic virtual environment. So here I go again, just filling the space. But I think you're absolutely, you're dead on around sort of like the more nuanced question of like, when you are not as much in the office, do things loom larger when you are? And that's for sure. I think that's what you're getting at. And
that's what I was saying. Yeah. And
what a great, I guess, lends into that for sure.
I guess, what I'm hearing writ large here, and I'm just curious if you agree, is you have this intention. Each team is going to have its different intentions. Obviously, the intention can't govern 100% of what you do, but it can definitely be a good, lodestar, whatever the expression is, to return to. And then coupled with that is this experimentation of like, it is different. And the things that we know, okay, you experimented with this, starting with positive feedback exclusively at the beginning of your all team summit gathering, and I think there's just a lot more trial and error required, because it's almost like we're all relearning how to work.
Yeah. And I think the trial and error part, I would stress, right? Which is, again, I've been and I'll hold myself accountable, right? We're all leaders who have to make decisions about this stuff. So as much as I'll say, I'm surprised that people haven't shared their findings. It doesn't have to be an A/B test with millions of samples, but I'm surprised there hasn't been more rigor around what we found is X. And so I'll also contribute to that and say, I'm responsible for that too. But the trial and error means, where did we err? Let's unpack that. Let's learn from that. Okay, cool. We'll try something else next time. So I think that's definitely more of it. I would be remiss, Roy, if I didn't share with you, a wider intention around our total setup if it's useful, which is mostly remote. Certainly at the LA Times, but certainly within product and what we call product all hands, or sister teams of engineering and data science, which is, we are remote, but with an asterisk. And again, it's the intention around, certainly in the teams that roll up to me, which is product, user experience design, user experience research, and with our sister teams, there's a certain level of synchronous work because we're creating solutions that bounds the remoteness, mostly around time. And so what we say is remote, but New York is +3, Maui is -3. That's sort of the boundary of synchronous work. The use case would be hey, Roy, I could use another set of eyes on this on Slack. I don't need it right this minute, but before I go to bed.
Yeah.
And so that's better done when you're not in Tokyo or Amsterdam. You know what I mean?
Yeah, time zones. I mean, as much as we have lots of great technology and the tools matter, and obviously as future and work investors, tools we invest in a donut that connects people, and for having conversation when they're remote, and plenty of other workplace tooling. As great as the tools are, we have yet to figure out how to bend time, and time zones are probably the single most important factor in a lot of the flow of the day. A lot of the team that I work with most closely is on the East Coast. And so it's all trial and error around all that stuff. And I hope can be healthier. I don't know. A lot of people describe in this moment feeling really down and worn down. I'm not feeling that personally right now, but I was a few months ago. So here's to just trying more stuff. Any other words of wisdom before we wrap?
Definitely not wisdom, but definitely more curiosity always. No, I guess it's what we've been saying. I think if we could all just do more around what are we getting and what are we giving up, and just be more clear around that. I think
I love that. Just being aware of the trade-offs and also the uncertainty. Leaders like me are used to feeling we kind of know how some things are going to unfold because we've done them lots of times. I don't know anymore. I just don't know. And if you want to know other things we don't know, you'll be able to see this once we post it. There are other questions at thisisnotadvice.work. And if you prefer listening, then on Jam, you can find the short form version of this once we throw it up there, and follow and get the past ones. And Glenn, I mean, I don't know. I feel like there should be some long compound German word or a emotional sounding Japanese word for that feeling of you've known somebody for a long time, you really appreciate them, and then you get to intersect in little ways.
That's what it is. And that's what it is for me too, Roy. More to come. I'm glad to see you, and we'll do more.
Lots of love. All right. Bye, Glenn.
Thanks, man. Bye.